Hello everyone. Welcome back to today's story. In this episode, the quiet life that Jay and Huyen have been building is suddenly shaken when a strange man arrives in their narrow alley asking to meet her. What seems like an innocent visit quickly spirals into confusion, fear, and suspicion because the man refuses to give his name, knows far too much about Huyen's past, and disappears just as mysteriously as he arrived. When Ji confronts her, desperate to understand who this stranger is, their argument uncovers deeper wounds. Stay until the end, because this chapter unravels the first threads of a truth that could change everything. And don't forget to subscribe to help us reach 500 subscribers. Your support means the world to us. The afternoon sun slants low across the yard, throwing long shadows over the bamboo fence Drew just finished tightening. Sweat still rolls down his neck, but he barely notices. His mind is somewhere else entirely. Ever since the neighbor mentioned the strange man who came earlier asking for Huyen, something inside Ji has been burning, twisting, refusing to settle. He keeps replaying the story in his head. A man, someone no one recognized, had walked into their narrow alley, leaning on an old motorbike as if carrying the weight of years. He didn't give his name. He didn't explain why he came. He only asked for Huyen, in a voice hoarse enough to sound like regret. That image alone is enough to make Joe's jaw clench. When he hears footsteps approaching, he doesn't turn immediately. Only when Huyen steps over the threshold with a small basket of morning glory does he finally look at her, really look at her. She smiles, proud, seeing the fence fully finished. "Jay, you did all this today?" she asks, voice warm. But Jay doesn't smile back. For the first time in a long time, he can't. He wipes his hands on his shirt, struggling to keep his tone level. "Huyen, who was that man?" She freezes, confused. "What man?" "The one who came here looking for you." His voice sharpens. "The one asking about you and Maya." Huyen blinks, startled by his sudden edge. I don't know anyone like that. Don't lie to me." He steps closer, heart pounding. "He came here today. He asked where you lived. He asked about your daughter. He asked about you. So tell me, who is he?" The tremor in his voice gives away more than anger. It's fear. Fear of losing something he hasn't even dared to fully claim yet. Huyen stares down at her hands, twisting her fingers together. "I'm telling the truth, Jay. I really don't remember anyone. Maybe he mistook me for someone else." But that explanation only makes Jay's frustration grow. How could a stranger know your name? Know you have a daughter? Know you divorced? He shakes his head, unable to contain the storm building inside him. People don't walk into an alley like this by accident, Huyen. Someone told him. Or you knew him before. The words land heavier than he intends. He sees Huyen's face fall, eyes glistening like she's been struck. She lowers herself onto the stone bench in the yard. "Jay, I really can't remember. My life before leaving my mother-in-law's house, it feels like a fog. I didn't speak to anyone. I wasn't allowed to." Her voice cracks, just a little. Ji pauses. Part of him softens, but the question still claws at him. "Then why did he come here?" He whispers, "Why today?" The wind rustles the bamboo fence. The creaking slats make the yard feel suddenly too small, too vulnerable, too full of silence. Huyen hugs her arms tightly around herself. I don't know, and it scares me too. But for Jay, fear only feeds frustration. He turns away, pacing once, twice, unable to calm the burning in his chest. He's been patient. He's been gentle. He's been building a home for both of them with his own hands. But the idea of a strange man appearing and knowing things about Huyen that even he doesn't, it twists every emotion he holds inside. Tell me the truth, he demands again, turning back toward her. Is he someone from your past? Someone connected to your ex-husband? Someone who wants something from you? Huyen lifts her head, eyes trembling. Je, why are you angry at me? That question stops him, just for a moment, because he doesn't want to hurt her, because the last thing he wants is to push her away, because everything she builds in this yard, every meal she cooks, every laugh she lets slip, has become a piece of his heart. But he doesn't know how to express that without sounding jealous, without sounding afraid. He exhales sharply. I'm angry because I care. Because I don't want strangers showing up here asking for you like they have a right to. He takes another step toward her. You and Maya, you're safe here with me, but I need to know what we're facing. The word we makes her eyes soften, but only for a heartbeat. Huyen pushes her hair behind her ear, voice small. All I know is, I'm scared too. I don't know who he is. I don't know why he came. And I'm sorry I can't explain. She looks down at the ground, ashamed, as if her broken past is some burden she can't fix. The tension in G's chest begins to shift. Less anger now, more aching worry. He sits beside her on the stone bench. For a moment they say nothing, letting the quiet river breeze pass between them. Another question rises in him, quiet but sharp. Did you talk to someone recently? Did anyone from your past find out where you live? No, she whispers. I barely talk to anyone except the neighbors. And you. It's the honesty in her tone that finally breaks something in him. His shoulders drop. The storm inside begins to settle, but the fear remains. He runs a hand over his forehead. Huyen, I need you to tell me everything you remember about your past. Anyone who could show up like this. She hesitates, wiping the corner of her eye. I don't remember much. Those years were cold, lonely. I tried to forget them. He sighs. That answer is true. He can feel it. But it doesn't solve the immediate threat of a strange man asking for her. Suddenly, she turns toward him, voice trembling. Gee, do you think he's dangerous? He meets her eyes. I don't know. But until we find out who he is, I won't let him near you or Maya. That's a promise. Her breath quivers. Something unspoken passes between them. Something deeper than fear. For the first time since the argument began, she reaches out and touches his arm, gentle but pleading. Please don't be angry with me. I didn't hide anything from you. I just don't know. Jay looks at her hand on his arm. Then slowly, he covers it with his own. I know, he murmurs. I know you didn't lie. I was just scared. The confession lands softly, like dusk settling over the river. Before either of them can say more, Bibi trots into the yard and nudges Huyen's leg, sensing the heavy mood. She picks the little dog up, voice cracking with leftover emotion. Let's go inside, she says quietly. Dinner's ready. But as they walk toward the house, neither can shake the thought. Who was that man? And why did he come looking for her now? Their peaceful life is no longer as untouched as it was this morning. Something has begun. Inside the small house, the warm glow of the oil lamp softens the tense air, but it doesn't fully erase the heaviness lingering between them. The clay pot of braised fish simmers gently, filling the room with a comforting scent. Normally, this smell would pull a smile out of Jay without effort, but tonight, everything feels slightly off balance. Huyen sets bowls on the bamboo table with slow, deliberate movements. Even Bibi senses something is wrong. The little dog curls beneath the table, watching them carefully. Jay sits down quietly, mind still running in spirals. Every detail of the stranger's visit feels sharper now that he's inside, away from the distractions of wind and sunlight. A man, around 70, asking for Huyen, asking about Maya, leaving without a reason, leaving without a name. Nothing about that sits right with him. When Huyen places a piece of fish into his bowl, her hand trembles just a little. Eat while it's hot. You need strength for the drive tomorrow. He looks at her, sees the vulnerability in her eyes, and guilt tugs at him. He hates that his frustration made her look like she'd done something wrong. He hates that she's scared, not just of the stranger, but of disappointing him. He finally says, quietly, "I'm sorry for yelling." She shakes her head immediately. "No, I understand. If I were you, I'd be scared too." The honesty in her voice softens him further. They eat in silence for a moment. A silence that's no longer sharp, but aching. Then Huyen asks the question she's been holding back. "Gee, do you think he could be someone connected to my ex-husband?" Her voice is barely above a whisper, as if saying it out loud might summon bad memories. G sets his chopsticks down. "I don't know, but I don't trust a man who hides his name." "What if he wants Maya?" she says, panic flickering in her eyes. "What if he's someone my ex sent to find us? What if..." "Hey." Jay moves closer, his tone firm but gentle. "No one has taken your daughter. No one is touching you. Not while I'm here." She looks at him, breath trembling. The fear etched into her face makes his chest tighten. If there's one thing he's certain of, it's this. He will protect her. He will protect both of them, no matter who comes knocking on that narrow alley. After dinner, the sky darkens fully, crickets humming outside. Huyen washes dishes while Jay steps out to check the motorbike for tomorrow's long ride. He flips through his vehicle papers, counts the cash in his wallet, checks the headlights, trying to focus on tasks, but his thoughts still drift back to the man he never even saw. Behind him, the door opens softly. "Jay," she calls, hugging Bibi close to her chest. "Did you bring a raincoat?" He turns, nodding. "I did." "And enough money?" "Yes." She presses her lips together, unsure what else to ask. Every question feels like a string she wants to tie around him, to keep him from going anywhere far from her and Maya. He kneels beside the motorbike, running his hand along the seat. "When I get back, I'll take Maya to school myself. No more walking." Those words break her composure. Her eyes turn glossy under the dim yard light. "Then you better keep your promise," she whispers. He stands slowly, and for a moment they just look at each other, the river breeze cool, the night sky humming, their shadows stretching together across the packed dirt. It is the kind of silence that says everything they cannot yet say out loud. But the peace shatters when the neighbor lady approaches the gate, lantern in hand. She hesitates before speaking. Huyen, that man earlier, there's something else I didn't mention. Jay stiffens. Huyen grips Bibi a little tighter. The neighbor steps closer, lowering her voice. After he walked away, another man was watching from the alley's end. I overheard him say, "My wife was right. She really is living with someone else." Then he left quickly. Huyen turns pale. Jay's heart drops into his stomach. Another man? He demands. What did he look like? I couldn't see clearly, the neighbor replies. He stood far away, but he was much younger than the older man, and the way he clenched his fists, it felt like anger. A cold wave rushes over the yard. Two men, not one, and one of them knew enough about Huyen to accuse her of living with someone else. The implication slices through the moment like a blade. After the neighbor leaves, Huyen sinks down onto the stone bench, face ghost white. Her voice shakes. Che, what's happening? Why are men showing up like this? What do they want from me? I don't know. Jay sits beside her, tension coiling in every muscle. But I'll find out. The fear in her eyes deepens. What if it's my ex? What if he sent people to watch me? What if... No. Jay cuts her off firmly. If your ex wanted to find you, he would have shown himself. Whoever these men are, they're hiding. They're watching. That means they're afraid of being confronted. His voice is steady, protective, fierce. But Huyen's mind is unraveling, memories surfacing, shadowed hallways, harsh voices, the feeling of being trapped. Jay, I don't want to go back to that life. I can't. He places both hands on her shoulders, grounding her. You won't. Not while I'm breathing. Her eyes overflow with quiet, shaking tears, more from dread than sorrow. She leans against him slightly, as if afraid the night itself might swallow her. For a long moment, he holds her there, letting her breathe, letting her steady herself. After a while, she whispers, I'm scared of leaving you tomorrow. What if they come back while you're gone? That fear pierces him deeper than anger ever did. He cups her cheek gently, wiping the corner of her eye. Then I won't leave until I figure out who they are. She looks at him sharply. But your job. This is more important, he says without hesitation. Her breath stutters. She never expected him to say that. Not so easily, not so firmly. But for Jay, the decision has already been made. The thought of her alone in this house, with unknown men lurking in shadows. He cannot live with that. I'll stay tomorrow, he continues quietly. We'll talk to the neighbors, ask if anyone else saw them, and until we know exactly who they are, I'm not letting you or Maya out of my sight. Huyen pulls Bibi closer, pressing her face briefly into the dog's fur, as if grounding herself. Thank you, she whispers, for staying, for believing me, for everything. He gently lifts her chin, so she has to meet his eyes. I'm not doing this out of obligation, Huyen, he says softly. I'm doing it because you matter to me. You and Maya both. Her lips part, surprised, touched, overwhelmed. The night breeze seems to hush itself around them, as if giving space for the words hanging between them.